Hello, welcome. This is my third video on computer science. I got kind of a lot I want to cover today. Uh, I'll try to keep it to half an hour, but no promises. Today I kind of wanted to get like some actual programming. Probably start out by telling you about functions. Functions are kind of like math functions. I'm gonna have to tell you a little bit about variables too. Uh, so a function in programming and a functional programming language is kind of a different idea, but most programming languages have a concept of functions which is similar to what a function is in math. So I'm gonna write kind of something that a lot of you have probably seen in a math class before. Kind of this idea of like a math function, y equals f of x. So a lot of the time, those are graphed. So x is a variable, kind of ranges across all of the real number line. So from like negative infinity to 0 to positive infinity, you kind of have the number line, and so a function like f of x is like a little math machine that takes any number along those lines, goes into the math function, and it puts out another variable y. So a lot of the time those are graphed, kind of. So this is kind of an example. So a lot of the time people will draw kind of a little chart for the function to go on, and I'm going to show you the function x squared. That's that's x squared. So whichever number you take, multiply it by itself. That's that number squared. So the function of that kind of looks is kind of a parabola. So this is kind of a rough a kind of a rough idea of the function x squared. Looks about like that. Uh, and so kind of one of my aims to tell you about here is deep learning, and like programming. You need to be able. Hey, no, I just started. So programming, you kind of need to be able to program, obviously, but for deep learning, you need kind of at least to understand the math behind it. You need kind of you need to understand math functions and stuff. So one thing about these functions, uh, that that uh, so so I drew kind of like this idea like rise over run. So the difference in from point A to point B along the x-axis, which is the input of the function, that difference is often called delta x. So and then the rise over the run of delta x is like f of delta x. Maybe we could say something like that. F of delta x. That's not really correct mathematically, but so I guess that might kind of give you an idea that by by for each number along the real line, there's a y value, a height above the rise above the x-axis, which is it's just kind of the real number line. Um, so a lot of the time, like if you go and take calculus, like kind of the one of the first things, kind of the first couple weeks of calculus one, they'll tell you about finding the rise over run just at a point. So the rise over run just at a point is just 0 over 0. But there's still a rise over run, which is kind of the slope of this curve here. And so for x squared, that's a good example. And usually within the first few weeks of Calculus 1, they'll tell you about something called the difference quotient. So and this is required to understand the mathematics behind deep learning. And I'm kind of also trying to introduce the idea of functions too. So so the difference quotient is kind of this idea. You have f of x plus delta x minus f of x all divided by delta x. So that's I think that's the difference quotient. Kind of think it back here. That's kind of the difference quotient. So at the top here is rise. That's the difference from it's just the difference, subtracting a little bit of rise from f of x, from subtracting that from, you know, so like if you have the number 2, you subtract 1, then like you get 1. It's kind of like the rise from 1 to 2 is 1, and then divide it by delta x. And calculus gets into kind of the idea of limits and stuff. I'm not really gonna get into that, but for x squared, that's a good example. It's a good example to describe what's going on here. So you kind of start out with x plus delta x squared minus x squared. Divide all that by delta x. So that's the difference quotient kind of for x squared. It's a the function for a parabola. It's a it's a pretty basic algebra function. Just that, and it's just the number times itself. So then with algebra, kind of expand that out. So x squared plus 2x delta x plus delta x squared minus x squared, and then divide the whole thing by delta x. Man, okay. Okay. I just wrote it again. It's a little bigger, just happens to be. So this is kind of expanding the x plus delta x squared in the parentheses there. I've expanded it out, and the parentheses don't matter that much in this case, but you can kind of see that the x squareds will cancel out, first of all. So I'm just going to cross those out. X squared minus x squared eventually just cancels out, and then all those delta x's kind of cancel out too. So I'm going to cross out that one, this one, and this squared up here. Just going to cross out the squared. It's like I've divided everything that's left by delta x. So those things all cancel out, and what we're left with is just 2x plus delta x. And in calculus they'll talk about limits like as it approaches 0, but for the purposes here, we're kind of just saying delta x is basically 0. It's so small that delta x, you kind of just it's the limit as, like, I don't want to get into that, but the limit as delta x approaches 0. So basically the slope of the parabola at a point, like if we just say like delta x is just 0, then the slope of the parabola at every point on the parabola is 2x. So like the function of that, that's called the derivative. The derivative of the function x squared is 2x. And what that means is that the rise over run at a point, the slope anywhere along the parabola is 2x. And that ends up very useful for, and it's just the first few weeks of Calculus 1 ends up very useful for the mathematics behind deep learning. And there are kind of other things that are required for deep learning that that I don't think I'll get to in this particular lesson. But kind of will intend to get to those later. So computers and actually math too. Like a function can be a function of multiple things. So we could have f of x and z. You know, like this is a math function too. Y equals f of x and z. The function has two parameters, x and z, and still has the output y. And in programming, a lot of the time there are functions like function definitions and stuff that are a function of some data. Could be a number, could be a picture. Like for deep learning, that's like kind of the whole idea that it's a function, a very kind of like the idea is to kind of like nest a mesh of lots of simple functions with multipliers between them and adjust all the multipliers so that it can approximate a function of a picture or something, so that there would be like a computer math function that just takes a picture instead of a number, and says like, is there a cat in this picture or not, and gives like a probability from 0 to 1 of how probable is it that there's a cat in this picture. And it's like a function of pictures, where you put a picture into the math machinery thing, and it puts out a probability from like 0 to 1 of how probable is it that there is a cat in this picture. And deep learning is used for a lot of other stuff, but that's kind of one of the things that it's really good for. So actually, I kind of it's kind of my personal feeling that the C language is a very compact language. It's very mid-level, like it's kind of close to how most computer architectures work, but it's still an actual programming language with functions and stuff. I think instead of getting into any C programming here, and I think something I said in an earlier video was that kind of the idea of like having a web browser and a text editor. We kind of, like most computers already have kind of at least that to get started with like HTML5. That HTML5 is kind of 3 or 4 languages really. The HTML is kind of a content language in itself. It's kind of a like a language for formatting, or not. I mean, it's a language for storing content basically. And then there's another language called CSS, that's cascading style sheets. Then that's a kind of a separate language that's part of HTML5 that's for styling the content, so that like HTML is for the content, CSS is for the styling, so like how the web page all ends up looking. And then there are kind of a couple other languages, like there's WebAssembly now is kind of a compiled language for web browsers, but JavaScript is kind of the standard scripting language for web browsers, and JavaScript is a language for actual dynamic stuff on the page, like uh, you know like HTML, you could have all the content of the document. Then CSS, you could have all the styling of how it's going to look and stuff, like the background colors and all kinds of stuff, like borders around stuff, all kinds of stuff. Um, and then JavaScript is an actual kind of programming language uh, that has functions and stuff in it, variables, and it's for dynamic stuff like functional, or that's kind of a different term, but like JavaScript is for uh, dynamic stuff on the page. So like you click a button and like something on the page actually changes when you click the button. And there are some built-in kind of JavaScript functions, and I'm going to tell you about one of them. And on most web browsers, I kind of switch between a couple web browsers, but on both of them, if I press F12, I'm not gonna because I'm streaming here, but if you press F12, it should bring up kind of web developer type stuff, like kind of extra stuff built into the browser to help you do web development type stuff. And if you press F12, at least on mine, it brings up all kinds of stuff like that, like web developer kind of friendly stuff to help you, um, work to help you write HTML5 and stuff. So if you press F12, that should come up, and if you press F12 again, it should go away, maybe something. But then you'll see in there something called the JavaScript Console. There should be something in there. Hopefully, maybe different browsers are different, but something about the JavaScript Console. And there is a built-in JavaScript function just called alert. That's like in math, usually the function name is just a letter, like f of, and then the variables. And the output of the function is another variable, also just a letter. Usually just use one letter. But in programming, usually the function name is like a whole word. Doesn't have to be. The function could be called f2. But there is a built-in function in the JavaScript language, at least the standard JavaScript language in browsers. That function is called alert. And what the alert function does, and I'll write out something here. The alert function is a function that just takes a string, and what I'm going to write for the purposes of this lesson is the string "hello world." A lot of the time, when you first start programming, the first thing that a lot of the first exercise in a lot of languages is the hello world, to make the computer say hello world. So the alert function, so I put single quotes around the string, and I put a semicolon at the end. Like that's kind of just good practice. Like the semicolon in JavaScript, you don't really need it, especially if things are on different lines. But the semicolon separates statements in the program. So I put single quotes around the string "hello world." So if you're at your JavaScript console, I Yeah, see, my handwriting's not that good. Like this is alert. Alert is the built-in function, and then the string, and then these parentheses are the parameters to the function. And this particular function, it can take a number, but in this case, it's taking a string, which I've put in single quotes, and that can vary a little bit system to system, and it doesn't really it doesn't matter quite as much sometimes in JavaScript, especially whether you use single quotes or double quotes. I think it does matter that this is all lowercase, the alert built-in function, and then the parentheses definitely matter because they're telling the computer like this is a function, and these are the parameters to it, which is just one parameter, the string hello world. So so if you type all this in, and I do suggest getting in the habit of putting a semicolon at the end of every statement. That like it's not really required, especially in JavaScript. But if you're not in the habit of putting those in, uh, it can it's just a good habit to be in for languages with C syntax, and JavaScript happens to be one of them. So so if you type this in your JavaScript console, alert, and then the parentheses with the hello world string inside the parentheses, the semicolon at the end. I suggest that. Then what it'll probably do is kind of make kind of a little alert window on the page, like a JavaScript kind of pop up alert window that just says "Hello World," and that's kind of like so that's kind of different in programming than math. Uh, like this is a function. Alert is a function, a programming function. But the parameter in this case is a string, like a text. It's a couple words with the quotes around them that just says "Hello World." And another way that computers like need to know which little part is which little part, like the individual statements of the program, and that's really kind of reflected a little bit in mathematical proofs, that I think they're even called statements too, that in programming, that that you kind of need the semicolon after each statement, especially if they're all in one line. Then you kind of need the semicolon to separate statements from to show where the statement ends. And that is kind of not well written. Maybe I should type that in the chat even. I'm going to type this in the chat. So what I typed here, and to get to that console, you press F12 and get to the JavaScript console and try this out. This is like a built-in function in JavaScript that kind of makes a little alert window on the page. In that browser tab makes a little a little alert window. And the hello world is kind of a classic kind of introductory, kind of the very first thing to do in any language is make the language say hello world. It's just kind of a very basic kind of first thing to do in any language. If you're learning a new computer language, it's good to especially as a student, just to get a little bit of practice making that language say hello world. So I actually covered a lot of what I wanted to here. So maybe get into a little more. I think maybe I will tell you a little bit about the C programming language. The C, it's kind of what C is, can vary a lot system to system, but there are kind of some standards of portability for compiling C so that it's very portable from system to system, and it can even be compiled to WebAssembly. So like you can write portable C, compile it to WebAssembly for browsers, kind of a fourth, kind of a binary compiled language for browsers. And that's been introduced pretty recently. Like HTML, the HTML5 standard included the HTML5 content language, a form kind of HTML got extended to XML, and then HTML5 is a subset of XML. And they're but HTML5 is kind of three languages. HTML is kind of a type of XML for the content of the document. CSS is cascading style sheets, and it can all go in the same document, but it's usually considered better practice to divide them out. So there's like a .html file, a .css file, and a .js file for the JavaScript. But maybe I should just tell you about that instead. I guess the C programming language is a very compact language. It's from like the 1960s. You know, they really had to keep the language compact to be very close to the machine level, but a little bit more user friendly than just typing in ones and zeros. You know, or you know, like pretty much literally. Uh, so so portable C is it's kind of the way to keep it portable is to keep everything very compact to the most basic standards of the C programming language. On most systems, every program will enter at in the C code to a function that's called main. The main function is commonly the entry point of a C program, and so on most systems, the main function returns an integer. Integers are, the natural numbers. They're numbers, but not real numbers. They don't have a decimal point like numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3. Those are integers. And the main function will return an integer. In C, that type of variable, and the variables have types. That's called an int, is like an integer variable. So in C, the return type is written before the function name, and the entry point for most systems is main. The main function returns an integer on most systems, and the return code from main is the return code of the program. So usually the standard is if the program ran successfully, it just returns the number 0. 0 means success. Like the return code of 0 is commonly the successful return code is 0. And then all of the other integers are left for error codes. Like if it exited for some other reason, return a -4, and then those return codes, anything that's not 0 is an error code. That if that main function returns something that's not 0, it's returning an error code. And the parameters, actually, I think I'm actually not completely sure. I'm kind of going over time now, but I'm not completely sure if this even matters what the errors or what the parameters to the main function are called. But this is, I just put a semicolon at the end like this. This is kind of like a function definition for the main function in C. So it returns an int, which is 0 for success. And this is like very portable C, like should kind of, if you have a C compiler, should compile even to WebAssembly. Maybe, I'm not sure. Actually, WebAssembly might not use the main function as a actually, it probably doesn't because JavaScript's a lot different. But then the first parameter usually to main is another integer. Argc is the count of parameters or arguments to the function is argc, int argc. And then in C, there's another variable type char, which is basically a very small integer just designed to store usually just an 8-bit integer meant to store like an ASCII or 8-bit character value. And then the star star, that's really getting into C there. And then argv is the vector of parameters, which so the star means that there's like more than one char, kind of. It's like an array. That the star means that there's like more than one character. And then 2 stars means there's more than one of those. So these are all null terminated character strings. That's really getting into C there. And then I put a semicolon at the end, like this. I kind of realized I shouldn't have done that maybe there, just because that ends up being what's known as a function definition of uh, of the main function, which for any C program, pretty much on any system like in portable C, the main function definition will have this function prototype. And because I put a semicolon at the end, it's not the actual definition of the function. It's just uh, like in C, what this particular statement would say in C is somewhere in the program there's a main function that has this declaration for for the main function, and that is where on most computer systems that you see, and that's basically all of them that, or well, basically all of them, that the that a function prototype like this would say there is a main function somewhere, and generally that's where where the program would begin running is with the main function. So I kind of went over time now. I've kind of finished everything I wanted to say here and said a bunch of other stuff. Um, so that kind of, I don't think that's enough to quite get started with C, but HTML5, like at least in the JavaScript console, maybe one other thing. I'll tell you one other thing, that if you want to write your own function in JavaScript, let's say let's say the function that I showed, the function x squared. Uh, this is the JavaScript function for x squared. So I called it f again. Let's see, and I did not write this very. Uh, very concisely. Or so in JavaScript to define a function. Oh no, I just screwed something up. I'm sorry. Let me see here. I ran out of room here on this piece of paper. Write this here. So to declare a function in JavaScript, you just type the keyword function. If you wrote function, it's gonna be put in a function. So that function, we're gonna call that f of x. And that function, what I forgot to write is the keyword return, which means to actually return the math stuff that the function has done with it. So my handwriting is a bit messy. So I'll just tell you what this says. So let's see. That's not very readable either. So you see this keyword function says we're declaring a function in JavaScript on that console again. If you want to use that console, function f of x, and then this open curly bracket is kind of how you say like what you want to put inside the function. Return is another keyword that says to return whatever the function has done. Like at the end of the function, you want to use the return keyword. X, this is an asterisk. That means multiplication. X asterisk x. That's x times x. F of x is x squared, x times x, and then a semicolon, and then a closing curly bracket. And then if you want to like see how that works, you can nest those functions. That ends up being part of deep learning too. So if you said something like this after you define that f of x function, you could say f of, or alert f of the number 2. Let's say that. So if you got the JavaScript console all set up correctly, that might work. I'm not even sure. But you would say alert open parenthesis and then f of open parenthesis 2 close parenthesis twice. You got to make sure these line up, and then a semicolon again. That should give you an alert that just gives you the number 4. 2 times 2 squared should give you a little alert box with the number 4. If you have this function declared correctly and stuff. So I think that's probably good for this lesson. And I went a little over time. I was trying to keep these to half-hour lessons, but maybe think that's probably good. Thanks for watching.